Berserk is an epic dark fantasy manga series that everyone has heard of, whether you read manga or are just a fan of fantasy in general. Now, the manga has sold more than 50 million copies, making it one of the best-selling manga series of all time, and one of the longest running. Berserk has spawned anime adaptations, films, and even video games. And Kentaro Miura was well known and respected for his legacy as a manga creator. And Miura's passing was one of the most unfortunate tragedies that could have befallen the manga industry. He was an absolute legend of his craft and an inspiration to many. Hidetaka Miyazaki, the man behind the Souls games, has said that Berserk was a big inspiration for Dark Souls. You can even find Guts' sword in Elden Ring. The Hunter's Mark in Bloodborne clearly took inspiration from the Brand of Sacrifice, and you can find several other references hidden within these games. Some people say that every sad boy protagonist with a big sword is inspired from Berserk, though that's debatable. I've wanted to read this series for so long now. I have heard some things that kind of made me hesitate, but I was just about to start reading it when I heard of Miura's passing, and to me it just would have left kind of a bad taste in my mouth if I had started making Berserk videos right after he passed away. It would feel like I'm trying to get views from the situation, if that makes sense. So I waited. During this time, I saw so much passion outpour from this fanbase. For instance, in Final Fantasy XIV, my favorite MMO ever, tons of players held a tribute to Kentaro Miura, and this made me really put into perspective what this series must have meant for so many people. But then I got distracted, making videos on other stuff. But now I have finally started my journey with Berserk, and today I am reviewing the very first arc, the Black Swordsman Arc. Now, this giant hunk of a book is volume 1 of the deluxe edition. It contains 3 volumes of the original manga. It also has chapter 1 of the Golden Age arc, which I haven't read yet because that's the next arc. This oversized hardcover is by far the best way to read this manga. It really allows you to see just how detailed the artwork is. It is the highest quality way to read this series. I'll have an affiliate link in the description if you want to pick it up for yourself. Now, this review will have spoilers for the first arc. I'm going to be going over all my thoughts. Parental warning, Berserk is not for the squeamish or the easily offended. This is an adult dark fantasy with lots of violence and deep themes, and it's kind of the Game of Thrones of manga, so you've been warned. The Black Swordsman Arc is the opening story of this sweeping manga epic. It's told across the first 3 volumes in 8 chapters. The story is broken into 2 separate parts, the introductory to the Black Swordsman and the Guardians of Desire. A new reader's introduction to Berserk is a lot to take in. Right from page 1, this story lets you know that it's for adults. It takes a lot of guts to start off a series with a brief intimate moment where a woman transforms into a demon and the protagonist blasts her with his arm cannon.
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
Speaking of Guts, we're introduced to the protagonist, Guts, the Black Swordsman. Now let's talk about Guts for a moment. Guts is a man with a gigantic sword that he really likes to swing. At this point in the story, he's missing a hand and an eye, and I'm very curious to discover the history behind this. At first glance, Guts seems like a pretty poor one-dimensional character. He's very angry and violent, and he doesn't have much personality. He's often looking down on those who are weak and thinking of them as being pathetic or not worth living. Honestly, he kinda comes off as a total sociopath. If you don't read beyond the first few chapters, you might think that he's just an edgelord and that's it, which is what I did the first time I tried reading Berserk. Yes, I did try reading volume 1 of Berserk years and years ago, but I never really gave it a full chance. I only got to the part where he was fighting the snake Baron dude, and I just thought it was way too violent and Guts wasn't likable, and I didn't feel an urge to continue. Boy, am I glad I gave it a second chance. Throughout this arc, Guts gets tortured, beaten, broken, and disfigured only to come back swinging and absolutely annihilating anyone and anything that stands in his way. However, beneath that aggression is a sadness. Soon you begin to pick up on subtle clues hinting at more depth to Guts' cold personality. The words he says often don't match his actions. He tries to become cold and detached to save himself from hurt. He doesn't want to hurt more than he already does. Guts is fighting demons at all times. Even in his dreams, he encounters the demons of his past and literal demons every single night. Oh, did I mention he's got a brand on his neck that summons demons to hunt him down? No, well, there's that, and this makes it so that he needs to become a monster in order to fight these monsters. He doesn't want to get close to people because he's only going to expose them to pain and suffering and death. So he acts like a jerk in order to push people away and to harden himself, and I'm glad that there's more to him than what my initial judgment was. I really didn't give him a fair chance, and I've only heard that he becomes more and more complex as a character as you read through the series. After reading the first arc, I have so many questions about Guts. There's so much I want to learn. I'm excited to read on. I want to know how he got this brand. What's his origin story? How does he know this Griffith person? I guess I just gotta read on. So anyway, after blowing up the demon with his arm cannon, he wanders to a nearby village and kills a bunch of soldiers in a bar to get the notice of a snake lord who has been ruling over the village. All of this happens in the span of 10 pages. From all that I've read so far, Berserk has never been boring. Maybe it slows down later on, but as of right now, it has been non-stop. Now, by chance, he saves the life of Puck, this funny elf comic relief character who ends up following him around like a mosquito that you can't quite shoo away. He does kind of remind me of Navi or like a Tinkerbell character. At first I was worried that he would just be an annoying character, but I ended up really liking Puck. He is a very mischievous elf, but he has a strong sense of moral decency and just general innocence to him that is in strong contrast to Guts and the world he inhabits. Puck also acts as sort of the reader's surrogate character. We see him horrified when something gruesome happens, or cheering Guts on during battle, and I noticed that that's kind of exactly how I was reacting as I was reading. Even when Guts drops a hint at something about his past, Puck is there to stare in curiosity, just like I am. He's a surprisingly light character in the story, and I think that's kind of needed to balance out how dark things can be, because it can get very dark. He brings some lightheartedness and some humor into the story, as well as more dialogue, because Guts doesn't really talk a whole lot. One thing I really liked is that Puck has the ability to sort of feel people's strong emotions, and at times he can feel what Guts is truly feeling. So maybe Guts is actually feeling incredibly sad, or just feeling anger or despair, and Puck can kind of pick up on that. Now I kind of want to know Puck's origin story and where these elves come from. If Puck ends up dying or something, I'm going to be so sad. Please don't spoil anything for me in the comments, by the way. Now, after the whole incident with the Baron is resolved, there's a short and incredibly ominous interlude called The Brand. Guts is on the road again, but he's wounded and tired from constant battle. Puck follows along despite Guts' best efforts to scare him off, and a kindly old priest and his granddaughter give him a ride in their cart. But then the curse of the brand acts up again and some spooky skeletons appear out of the fog, and this section really caught my eye. Just the attention to detail in the armor of the skeletons, the way the white space is used, the incredible action shots of Guts swinging his blade. It's all glorious action until tragedy befalls the old man and the little girl. And after hesitating and getting stabbed for the effort, Guts is forced to do what he has to when the little girl is possessed. This time there's no glory. The panel displays Guts from far off, as if from the view of a bird, as he quickly strikes her down. The reader is made to feel the pain and the horror of this tragedy that Guts is trying to hide. We see him crack as he begins to vomit before using his rage to demolish the remaining undead, this time drawn with a shadow shrouding his face. Afterwards, when he's talking to Puck, he throws up that same cold mask like he doesn't care, but we know the truth. Then there's these creepy voices that tell Guts they're always watching him and that he belongs to them. This is where the story just really clicked for me. We learn about the physical and the emotional stress that he's going through, and that he's capable of carrying even if he tries to fight it. And we can kind of understand why he tries to fight that emotion. Now, this introductory chapter also serves to introduce us to what I assume are some of the main aspects of the series. The brand, the demons, the apostles, the god hand. We get all the world building and the basics right off the bat, but we don't get the details on all of those until later. I thought it was a pretty strong opening chapter. Besides, like, the first couple pages, I didn't really want that in my head, but I think the rest of the chapter was a really great introduction to this character and how horribly terrifying this world is. Now, before I talk about part 2, let me just talk about the art. Miura is an incredibly talented artist. There's multiple full-page spreads of Guts cleaving something in half that made my jaw drop. Berserk's black and white, doom and gloom vibes are amazing, the action scenes are dynamic, and generally pretty easy to follow, showing off many elements of movement. The dark medieval setting looks incredible, though I am looking forward to more variety in future volumes. His characters have intricate outfits and armor drawn with realistic detail. And then of course the monsters. When Miura draws monsters or wants to evoke horror, he draws complete nightmare fuel. Not to mention the strange hell dimension at the end is just so intricate and interesting. There's something about the art style where you can tell that it's a manga that was drawn in the 80s, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's actually pretty charming. Maybe it's the softness of like the faces and hair that older manga has. I don't really know, but I'm excited to see how the style improves over time because it's already incredibly detailed, and this is just the beginning. The Guardians of Desire is the second part of the Black Swordsman Arc, and if Chapter 1 was an introduction to show us how badass Guts is, while also giving some glimpses of what's beneath, Chapter 2 reveals even further how tragic his effort is. And this is where the narrative becomes much stronger. Guts moves on to his next target, a count known for his brutal heretic hunts. After making himself known, he's assisted in escaping by a man named Vargas. We learn the whole backstory of Vargas, how he was tortured and disfigured by the Count and had to watch his family be eaten alive. Yeah, it was pretty messed up. And now he wants revenge, understandably. Though he is kind of creepy in a way, Vargas is a character I did have sympathy for. Oh, and also he has this egg thing, the Behelit, I think it's called. This egg face item, I still don't really understand what it is, but it seems to be a portal to a different dimension. Now, Vargas is obviously no match for the powerful Count. He's kind of pitiful. In a way, he's kind of a walking representation of what Guts fears that he'll become. Weak and driven purely by revenge. This makes him take out his own self-loathing on Vargas by tripping him and acting incredibly abusive, because he can see himself and his fears within him. That's how I took it anyway. Yet poor little Vargas still has a gentle and kind side to him. He's kind of a perfect foil to Guts' weakness. We later see these fears realized when Guts confronts the God Hand, these evil entities who view Guts in much the same light that the Count views Vargas. Weak and insignificant, and in a way this kind of reminds me of the cosmic horror of H.P. Lovecraft. Beings that have power so great that it makes you seem like an ant. Anyways, later on, Vargas is executed, and I really thought Guts was going to save him for a moment. I should have known better, but we once again see cracks in Guts' mindset as he battles his own humanity and sorrow of seeing this man who tried to help him be killed. And then Guts vows to kill the Count. Now let's talk about the Count, shall we? The Count is a disgusting and vile villain who becomes more and more of a monster, and his demonic slug-like appearance and the body horror of some of the scenes where he goes into other bodies was complete nightmare fuel, and it actually made me uncomfortable. He is very grotesque, he's committed numerous atrocities, but he has this soft spot for his daughter, Teresia, I believe. He loves her and wants to protect her, and he takes his protectiveness to extremes by locking her away in the castle. I didn't have any sympathy for the Baron, and I don't have much for the Count, but the extra depth that is given to this villain does make you feel kind of bad for him. At least a little bit. You know a villain is well written if they got that extra depth. The question of evil and human nature are some major themes in this arc, as well as just showing how far someone's willing to go to deal with their pain. And in that regard, the Count and Guts are somewhat similar. Now the climax of this arc is where things get really weird. Guts uses the Count's daughter as a hostage, and right when you think he's won, they end up being transported to another dimension because of the weird egg face thing. Few stories out there manage to make their version of hell feel truly otherworldly or terrifying, and here we get a depiction that is really discomforting and mind-bending, and again, Miura's artistic abilities are really on display here. Guts is greeted by these villainous beings, and all 5 of these characters have a distinct design and personality that makes them uniquely creepy, and they seem to be far above anything else that Guts has faced so far. One of which he keeps calling Griffith. Now it's clear he has some history with Griffith. We get a panel flashback of them as soldiers and Griffith helping him up. I love the mystery, I have so many questions, and I'm assuming in the next arc, we're going to be seeing a lot more of this Griffith and discovering what he means to Guts, so I'm excited for that. But as of right now, he looks like the big bad of the story. Unless there's something worse later on, I don't know. I'm assuming there's kind of an Anakin story here. They give the Count a decision to sacrifice his daughter or himself, and the Count actually makes the right decision in the end, which I don't even know if Guts would do. Now at the end, Guts is totally exhausted and broken looking, and he ends up giving Teresia a choice. To give up, to just end it all and escape the pain once and for all. This is likely something he's contemplated a lot for himself. Now I think by pushing her over this edge and giving her a choice, he's also attempting to give her something to live for. He's giving her someone to hate so that she can live for vengeance like he is. And this works. Teresia hates Guts for how he changed her life forever and vows to kill him. So it's likely she's gonna appear in the future to face off against Guts at some point, which makes me kind of wonder about if anything's gonna happen with her and Puck, because I kind of liked the friendship they had. Now that's kind of gone. I couldn't stop thinking about how messed up she's going to be from all of this. Imagine being a child and seeing the literal monster that your father became, learning that he killed your mother, and then seeing him be dragged off to hell by the undead. Yeah, she's gonna need some counseling. At the end, his mask completely shatters as his despair overwhelms him. It's hard to say whether he's feeling sad for the girl, feeling overwhelmed from everything that just happened, or maybe even wondering if he himself should give up. Overall, I was not expecting to like Berserk as much as I did. I really knew next to nothing about it before reading, besides the fact that Guts has a big sword. I also do remember watching a few episodes of the 1997 anime adaptation. I don't really remember much about it, but I think I will be watching the anime adaptations later on when I'm done with the manga. In my opinion, it can go a little overboard with how graphic it is, at least to what I'm used to. I still have the image of the Count. You know what I'm talking about? It was also a little uneven at parts, but overall, I was extremely entertained. I was never bored. I'm 100% on board to read more Berserk and to figure out the answers to all the questions I have. I have been holding off reading any further until I made this review, so it's finally time for me to start the Golden Age arc, which seems to be a lot longer than this one. I'm not really sure if I should break up my reviews for that arc into separate parts or just review it all in one big video. Let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts on the Black Swordsman arc. I would probably give it like an 8 out of 10. I don't usually give ratings. Anyway, make sure to subscribe if you want to follow my journey reading through Berserk, and I'll see you next time. This was my very first manga review, even though I've been reading manga for a long time. I plan on making many more.